Okay, I understand non-duality, but nothing has changed. What am I missing? That is the question. Brilliant question. Let's take a look at what words have been used, what the questioner and the seeker is actually seeking as an answer. Let's find the assumption, then answer it logically, and then take a look at it through direct experience, both the question and the answer. Right, let's go. So the first word is I. I understand. I. I is the identity. I is the ego. I is the person. The ego that identifies with the body and the thoughts and the feelings, with the entire person. I am the person. Everything that's going on with this person, that I am. So that I says, I understand. The ego understands. The word understand means that you have come to a conclusion. You have understood after weighing all the options, after thinking it through. You have understood. 2 plus 2 is 4. I get it. I have understood it. It's clear. There is clarity. I don't need more information. I have understood it. So the ego says, I have understood. Non-duality. Non-duality, as we know, you already are on the path. You know that non-duality means not two. That the entire existence is one. There is no separation. There is no second apart from what is. That's non-dual. But nothing has changed. That means things outside, something should have changed. Nothing has changed. After understanding, the ego has understood non-duality, the concepts, the philosophy, the examples. He or she can explain it to other people as well. But nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And then the final part of the question is, what am I missing? What meaning something. There must be a thing, a this or a that I am missing. What am I? Again the I comes, the ego. What is the ego missing? Missing means the final piece of the puzzle. That which will make it complete. That which will click it all together. What is the ego missing? So, to put the question in direct terms, the ego understands the concepts and the philosophy of non-duality, but nothing has changed. What is the ego missing? That is the question. It sounds a little different when I'm using the ego instead of the word I. I understand non-duality, but nothing has changed. What am I missing? Sounds very plain and clear and clean. But when I say the ego understands non-duality, but nothing has changed, what is the ego missing? Sounds very different because there comes a gap between what you are and the ego. The ego is being spoken of as a third person point of view, while the word I becomes personal. Alright, so that's the question. And let's take a look at the assumption. What is the seeker? What is the question assuming? I understand non-duality. Nothing has changed. So the assumption is, after understanding non-duality, something should have changed. If not everything, something should have changed. But the seeker says, the question says, nothing has changed. I have understood it. Nothing has changed. No difference. So the assumption is that after understanding it, something should have changed. And why is this very critical? Because when you understand other things, if you go and understand law, now you can see the court and crime scenes and you understand law, how lawyers work, that has changed. Your view of how you perceive law changes. Apply that to anything. When you understand how to play an instrument and you practice, it changes everything. When you understand how to swim and you go and swim, it changes everything about that particular thing. But here it is non-duality. That is not a thing. So The questioner says, I understand it all, but nothing has changed. He says, not one or two things might have changed, something's changed, a little bit has changed, yeah, I feel a little. He says, nothing has changed. And the question is, what am I missing here? And it's a valid question, very correct, very honest. And the only one assumption or two assumptions I see here. Number one is that the understanding should have changed something. If I understood something, something should have changed, but nothing has changed. And then the second assumption is that I still need something. There's something missing. What is missing? There is something missing. The seeker uses the word what, meaning a thing. It could be a concept. It could be the next quote. It could be the next book. It could be the next whatever video you watch. You're waiting for that one thing that is missing, that will change everything. Who is waiting? The ego. So the assumptions, one, I understood, should have changed, didn't change. Assumption two, what am I missing? Something is missing. Alright, so let's get to the logical answer of this. What is the logical answer? The ego understands non-duality. You know how the mind works. In Advaita Vedanta, the mind has four parts. Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankar. It's the thinking mind, the understanding, which is the intellect. Then you have the memory, where you remember and you forget. And then you have the ego, the identification. These are the four functions. So the mind thinks, the ego says, I think. The mind understands, the ego says, I understand. The mind remembers and forgets. The ego says, I remember, I forget. The ego has not done any of the thinking. The ego has not done any of the understanding. The ego has not done any of the remembering or the forgetting. It takes ownership. It claims ownership of every thought within the mind. And it itself is a thought, the I thought. So all the other thoughts, what's the difference between the ego and the other thoughts? All the other thoughts are about other things. They keep changing. You have a million things that you think of. There are a million things you understand, another million you don't understand. There are a million things you remember and those that you forget. So many different ones. But this I, the I thought, is constant. It's singular. It never changes. It's there throughout. It takes ownership, it claims ownership of everything in the mind. So the questioner says, I understand. So the ego has claimed ownership of the understanding, the intellectual clarity of non-duality. It says, I have understood it, but nothing has changed. Expecting something to have changed after understanding it. What is the ego missing? What is missing here? The final part of the puzzle. It's impossible to get because the ego is the very obstacle for anything to change and everything to change. As long as the ego is there, nothing will change. And the ego does not want to not be there. It wants to be there when everything changes. That's not possible. I always say this, one thought and you are in the universe. No thought and you are the universe. So the first thought, as long as there's a thought that pops up, the thought is within the universe. No thought and you are the universe. So any thought, one thought, obscures the entire consciousness. Why? Because your attention is being paid to the thought. As long as you're paying attention to the thought is about a thing in time and space. When you say the I thought, it's about this within time and space and the entire story that we carry along. The attention paid to the I thought, and you are in the universe. Attention not paid to any thought. No thought. You are the universe. Okay, so the logical answer is that the ego itself is the obstacle for anything to change. Not anything, everything to change. So what is the ego missing here? The ego needs to go missing. If you have had glimpses, you have had some enlightenment experiences where you felt one with the universe, where you saw light everywhere, where any mystical experience or profound experience where you had unity with the entire universe. Recall that experience, and the one thing that you will find is that you, as you knew yourself to be, were missing. I, as I know myself to be as the person, that was missing. And with that one missing, everything was connected. Everything was one. No separation, no division. As soon as the I thought comes back, you're back in the world. You are in the world now. Everything is back to normal. Separation. Everything in time and space. The ego needs to go missing. The problem is that the ego wants to be there, number one. It wants control. It wants to know what happens in the unknown. If I let go of the ego, what will happen? I don't know. I just want to be sure that I know what's going on. And so the ego doesn't let go. But that's not non-duality. The moment you have the I thought, you have already created duality. That's not non-duality. So the logical answer is that the ego itself is the obstacle to what it's trying to achieve. Let the ego step out of the way. Everything is already as it is. Everything will change. When the ego is no longer believed in, no longer paid attention to, not something will change, everything will change. Why? Because you have changed. What you thought and knew and believed yourself to be, that has changed. And with that one change, everything changes. Okay, enough talking. Let's experience it correctly, right now, directly. Right now, here. Abide as awareness. Just calm down. All the energy, all the noise in these words that I've made, let's bring it down to silence. Okay. So you are abiding as awareness, consciousness, nothingness, emptiness, whatever you call it. This awareness is complete as it is. Nothing can be added to it or taken away from it. You can't do anything to achieve awareness. You cannot feel your way to awareness. You always are. Awareness always is. You cannot think your way to awareness. It is always. You cannot do something to become awareness. All the feeling, all the thinking, all the thoughts, all the understanding, and all the actions that you do as a person arise and subside within awareness. Awareness remains untouched, complete as it is. So if you're truly abiding as awareness right now, without a thought in the mind, simply recognizing awareness, everything is connected. It is the substratum of the entire universe. There is no thing that doesn't appear within awareness. Everything is one with awareness. Now, pay attention, I said the word recognize awareness. Because you can't see awareness. You recognize awareness. If your eyes are open right now, there must be some object around you. The eyes always see things, but the mind can recognize the reality behind those things. So you recognize awareness. Recognition is a shift in the mind. It's a step back. I see something, I recognize something else in that same thing. I see a blue sky, I recognize a colorless sky. The same sky that looks blue, I recognize the reality which is colorless. So in the same way, everything around you seems separate, they're things. You recognize awareness. Unbroken, infinite awareness in which everything appears. Including your body, including your thoughts, including your feelings. So if you're at this stage, if you have had glimpses, if you're at the stage whereby you say, I have understood it and I have felt it sometimes, and sometimes I'm connected, sometimes I'm not. What am I missing? From that point of view, you need to stabilize the recognition. It needs to be integrated into the person. You see, anything that the body and the mind needs to do, it needs to be trained, it needs to be conditioned. Recognition is immediate, integration takes time. So awareness is complete. There is nothing missing. So when the questioner asks, what am I missing? There is nothing that's being missed. The presence of the ego equals the absence of awareness. In the sense that attention is on one of them at a time. You can't pay attention to the ego and consciousness at the same time. You can't pay attention to two things at the same time. You can't have two thoughts at the same time. You can see two things as one thought. You can see a million things as one thought. But two thoughts coming up at the same time, that's not how the mind works. Multitasking is shifting between thoughts very quickly. So, when the person is there, no connection with the entire universe. When I'm recognizing awareness, the person is missing. The very ego that is asking the question needs to go missing. And everything is complete as it is. So when the ego goes missing, when you're in this state of awareness, consciousness, everything feels complete, connected, everything appears within it, everything changes. What have you actually done? You've just zoomed out from the person to awareness. Where are the problems? Where is the confusion? Where is the doubt with the person? Awareness, no confusion, no clarity. Awareness just is. All doubts and confusion arise within the mind and are solved within the mind. Awareness, untouched. There's a brilliant saying of Charlie Chaplin. I'm not very sure, but the saying is that life is a tragedy in a close-up and a comedy from afar. The same everyday comedy videos and reels that we watch, where people are either getting hurt or being made fun of, or we see that situation and it makes us laugh. We are seeing it from afar. It's hilarious. But when it's happening to us, or what that person is going through at that point, it's a tragedy for them. It's true for this. All the problems exist when the ego is present. When it's absent, no problem. Everything is needed when the ego comes up. When it subsides, nothing is needed. This is precisely what happens when you go into deep sleep. In deep sleep, you don't need anything because the ego has gone to sleep. The mind is inactive. So let's take a look at the question one last time and see if it's all put together. I understand non-duality, but nothing has changed. So this awareness does not need your understanding. It's unaffected by any understanding. You can understand all you want. It is not going to change. It is that in which everything changes. So I understand non-duality, but nothing has changed. Absolutely correct. nothing will change. With your understanding, nothing will change. Because the I is still there, claiming ownership of everything as it was before you understood. What am I missing? That's the second part. Nothing. You need to go missing. Just as you do within deep sleep at night, but now doing it consciously. Recognizing awareness, consciousness, nothingness, emptiness. The witness, the observer, the subject. Yeah, I think that's it. I understand non-duality, but nothing has changed. What am I missing? As long as you are there, nothing will change. The moment you disappear, everything changes. And if you're having glimpses of this, where it comes and goes, you need to stabilize it. Here is where you need conditioning and clarity of what is going on in the mind. All the questions are of the mind. All the solutions and the clarity will also be of the mind. But when you get a solution, you get an answer to a doubt or a confusion, the mind stops bothering you. The mind will never bother you with things that it understands. The mind has questions, and questions are about things that it doesn't understand. And the ego says, I don't understand, I understand, I want to know, and I want to be there all along. So if you're having glimpses, stabilize it, work on that. I do that on my one-on-one sessions. There are ways to get clarity. Absolutely, integrate it slowly. The more clearer the mind, the less the doubts and confusion arise. The body and the mind takes time to catch up with the glimpses and the recognition that you have just had. I think we've covered everything. I understand non-duality, but nothing has changed. What am I missing? You need to go missing. When you go missing, everything changes. We'll leave it at that.